We'll start, ironically, with your twin brother, Chris, who had his first win today at the MCG. A little relieved and perhaps a little bit defensive about the media narrative on the Cats after the game.
Well, if we had a loss today, we would have been okay, disappointed and some work to do. But when you haven't got much content 3 weeks in, the grand prognostications are kind of the way to go. And like when you look a bit silly in the fullness of time, I reckon. So I just try not to make them.
You must understand that 0-4 would have been the reigning premier. That would have been significant.
Yeah, but things that haven't happened before happen all the time. And yeah, it would have been significant. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't be saying those things. It's your job. It's just not my job to participate in that conversation and get distracted about what we need to do internally.
I love the way Chris does those clever little backflips, has a major crack at the media, but go ahead and do it. I mean, of course it was a massive story that Geelong were 3 and zip. And, you know, in the first quarter today, it looked like a pretty big story was emerging, but status quo seems to have been returned, doesn't it? Kate?
Yeah, I think that the questions were rightly posed with the way that they were playing, and certainly we didn't,
Absolutely,
question their premiership credentials. It was more around the hunger and had they over-celebrated and had they been as driven and as competitive as they were towards the end of last year. And Hutchie, I know you wanted to speak about Patrick Dangerfield responding with his leadership, which has been questioned, but also Mitch Duncan, who came back into the side and was important today.
Yeah, to Caro's point, half-time looked pretty dicey, but the Cats turned it on it was the veterans that got them going in the third quarter. And the Duncan back in, Brad, was a thing today, wasn't he? He had such a big impact on this game.
Yeah, he's a very, very good player, but I don't think it should be lost on people that, you know, you bring new players into your club, and Essendon brought in Will Setterfield and Sam Wiedemann, and it can take some time for those players to gel. And if you look at Tanner Bruin, you know, Henry, there are some new players in that side. Jack Bowes comes into that side who, you know, with due respect to those guys, they were probably struggling to get a game at their old clubs, and they've come into a premiership unit, and that can take some time to gel. And, you know, Geelong have done it very well. They continue to bring in new players, and they're not just looking at the short term, it's also the long term.
What were your thoughts when Hawthorn kicked the first 3 today? Geelong had lost their first 3, Hawthorn started well. What are your emotions watching that?
The footy, I mean, it's amazing now. If you go through the season, even though we're only 4 weeks in, you know, Brisbane get badly beaten by Port round 1, you know, Porter up and going, and then the commentary around Port Adelaide the last couple of weeks has been a little bit surprising, but it just can happen. The way the rules are now with 666, stopping momentum is difficult. So I just think the story there is that every team on their day is capable of beating anyone, which is what the AFL wanted.
And then after half-time, they just went bang. So some of the numbers in that third quarter were extraordinary, and Geelong did flick that switch. The numbers, 14-4 at stoppage, 22-1 inside 50s and 10 goals, 5 to no score. Sam Mitchell was a bit lost as to what to do in the box during that third quarter.
I said to Mitch Lewis, 5 minutes to go, he was sitting up in the coach box with us, is there anything we can do is there anything we can do to help the players at this point? And, I went to the bench in the last quarter just to talk them through it. I thought, I think Luke Bruce down there, he'd been here before and sort of had this understanding of what was required.
It is a bit concerning, Hutchie, when you're looking to Mitch Lewis in the coach's box asking, what can we do? Because this was what happened, and every record was almost broken from a Hawthorn perspective during that third quarter. So the decision to trade away those players was always going to be a talking point. And when results happen like this, and Sam says post-game, we didn't know what to do, we're asking a young player what we can do, then it does raise your eyebrows.
They're young though, aren't they?
Well, of course.
I'm a bit glass half full on them. I know not many people are.
That doesn't happen though if Mitchell and O'Meara, they don't win the game. But that leadership
but does that take you any closer to winning if they're there today?
Well, I think
they lose by 60 rather than 80.
Does Warple take you any closer? I mean, O'Meara takes Warple's spot. I mean, it's a discussion that can be ongoing. I have some sympathy for Sam with the situation that his list was left in from Alistair Clarkson and his non-belief in the draft, but that's the result you're going to get at times this year.
And then you get to Jeremy Cameron, who really kept them in the game for the first half. Like, there was an argument they'd be 3-4 goals down at half-time without him. He's had 22 touches, he's kicked 7 goals. Patrick Dangerfield sees the best player in the competition at the moment. He never really played this role at the Giants, seemingly, in 10 years there. And you look back now at that moment of him leaving their footy club, and the impact he's having on Geelong is enormous. Do you think he's the best player in the comp?
It's hard to think of anyone who's better. He's just the complete package. He's an incredible athlete.
Could we finally see a full forward win the Brownlow?
Well, I think we should. I think we've got to get past midfielders awards. I mean, midfielders are around the action all the time, and you put your best players around the ball generally. But I think if you spoke to every senior coach, Jeremy Cameron would be up on the list of best players in the comp. So he should win it. And
they knew he lost Blick starts for the game. He came back, but it was a ruck incident, and that didn't make Chris Scott happy either.
You can't do it. There are 2 umpires right there. The AFL sent out a memo that couldn't have been clearer, saying not only is that a free kick, but it's reportable. You cannot do it. How they miss that is beyond me, and it has to be taken out of the game.
So you once had the job of overseeing the people that oversaw that, and it's still part of the game. Where do you sit on it?
Oh, well, Chris is right. I mean, all coaches I think it was end of March, got a memo about this trend of rucks starting to use the knee as more of a weapon rather than to protect themselves. And so the clarity was really good. And that's the way we approached it at the AFL. If we saw a trend, we'd get proactive and send it out to the clubs. Because ideally, we didn't want to have to pay free kicks. We wanted to change the behaviour. So that was really clear to all of us. And we certainly spoke to our rucks. And that's exactly the example that they're talking about.